we have some amazing guests for the final talk of the day. We're joined by Amy Fitzgibbons, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Stitcher, as well as Aaron Nestor, who is the Senior Designer at Stitcher. And I can't wait to hear from you both about your roles, not just at Stitcher. Now, as we know, Stitcher is part of SiriusXM and the SiriusXM family, which also includes Pandora. So it's really a podcasting empire now and a force to be reckoned with. And I'm sure so much of that is due to your fabulous marketing and design activities and the communication that you do to build audience for the empire. So we're gonna hear a little bit about that. I wanted to quickly tell the audience that Amy and I have quite a bit of history working together. Way back, we were at American Express together in the product and marketing area at American Express. That's sort of where post-business school, we each kind of cut our teeth in terms of learning how to market and build great brands. From American Express, first I joined PhotoShelter as head of marketing way back in 2008. When I became CEO here in 2012, I was out looking for a new head of marketing to replace myself, and I thought of Amy. So where Amy became VP of marketing here at PhotoShelter for several years, and she launched a little product that we now know as PhotoShelter for Brands. And so in addition to her exploits of taking over the marketing operation and making it much more professional than I ever could. So Amy, we're thrilled to have you here. Now you're a PhotoShelter alumni using PhotoShelter as part of your day-to-day creative operations. So it's a pleasure to have you both here with us.
Thanks so much, Andrew. You forgot to mention that at Amex we were new hire buddies.
Yes,
they
that's
buddy
right.
you up with someone, and Andrew was my buddy, showing me the ropes. So.
Yes, so it continues.
Here we are.
So thank you both for joining us today, and we have a great group of people who have stayed throughout the day: marketers, creators, photographers, designers, and they're eager to hear from you. We were joking yesterday when we were preparing that, of course, podcasting is an audio experience, but there's a tremendous visual aspect to the podcast and marketing the podcast experience as well. So that's where some of your talk is going to focus. And I'm going to turn it over to the two of you for your presentation, and then I'm going to rejoin you for Q&A.
Great, thanks so much, Andrew.
I'll go off camera.
I am going to share my screen here in a minute, but I am enjoying the live chat conversation with everyone's podcast recommendations. So I'm glad we have a lot of podcast fans here. Let me just bring up my presentation quickly. And let me go to full screen mode so everybody can see. As Andrew mentioned, for the last 5 years, I've been running marketing for all things podcasts at Stitcher. If you aren't familiar with Stitcher, it is most widely known as a podcast listening app, just like Spotify or Google or Apple. It's actually usually about the 3rd largest listening app out there. We've been around for well over 10 years. And as Andrew mentioned, we were purchased by SiriusXM and Pandora about almost exactly a year ago. So in addition to the app, Stitcher also makes our own podcasts and distributes them widely. So shows ranging from Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend to WTF with Mark Maron. We've got a slate, I think, of something like 70 or 80 of our owned and operated shows. And then the third piece of our business is that we work with advertisers to monetize podcasts. So not only our own podcasts, but partner podcasts as well. So we work with shows like My Favorite Murder, Hidden Brain, Freakonomics that we don't necessarily make internally, but we help sell the ads in those shows. So that gives you kind of a little bit of a background of kind of what Stitcher is and what we do. And my job is really to help find people listen to those podcasts and using all kinds of marketing channels to do so. So as Andrew said, we were joking yesterday, like podcasts are visual, or at least the marketing of them is, and that's what I do for a living. And I just have a couple of slides here that show you the ways in which we have used visual storytelling to drive audience and drive listeners to our audio platforms. The Times Square billboard is always the most exciting, both for myself, for our creators, and for everybody around. So that is Times Square. You can see we've used Full Release with Samantha Bee and Freakonomics Radio. We've done a few others there. Aaron, who will jump in here in a couple minutes, is the designer of all of these things. But we also use visual assets in social media. You can't just use an audiogram or audio in social media. It's a visual medium. You've got to be visual. And so you can see just some ways that here that we've used. We use the cover art and other artwork to create our social media posts. We have advertising and marketing that we do to advertisers so that they know we have podcasts and what podcasts we have come in, and that is under a brand called Midroll. And so you can see here the office ladies, Angela Kinsey and Jenna Fisher. So we use photography, we use illustration. There are so many different pieces of the design world that we use for visual storytelling. It's Podswag, so Yoav, we will get you that discount code for the Podswag merch. But again, just another way that the visuals come to life in podcasting, whether it's a t-shirt or a pin or a mask. Or a necklace, and we sell quite a bit of merch and fan merch using our visuals. But where it all starts is the cover art. For podcasts, the cover art and the brand of the visual brand of the podcast are pretty much one and the same. There, of course, is an audio brand and a style, and we very much try to match that also with what you are hearing and the style of what you're hearing to what you see in the visuals. Recently, I saw a stat, you hear the phrase, don't judge a book by its cover. Well, the stat was, I believe, 61% of people judge a podcast by its cover. It's like a fine wine, like a book, like anything else. And so the cover art is the opening of the podcast. It tells you, is this going to be a fun? Is it going to be serious? Who's the host? Usually if it's a celebrity, we will put them on the cover art. So, and again, all of these credit to Aaron Nestor, who works on all of our cover art and is just so great at kind of bringing together the essence of what is an audio medium to have a visual component to it as well. So on the marketing front, I know you all have been talking a lot about process and things like that today. What I want to stress is not only do we have a lot of channels we're marketing in, but we as marketing, we have a lot of partners that we work with to promote our podcasts. Now that we're in a larger company in SiriusXM, I don't have ownership over every social media channel myself. I don't have ownership over every email channel, over push notifications in the Pandora app, right? These are all places and channels that many other people own and run. And now, especially in a bigger company where we have access to market our podcasts on other platforms like SiriusXM's app, like SiriusXM Satellite, like listening in the Pandora app and other places, we just have so many internal partners who need assets from us in order to get the creative done and get it into their channels and get it into their channels in a timely manner that will help us promote the podcast and really grow the audience on launch day. So there's just stuff here internally, Stitcher, the SiriusXM, SXM Media, which is our advertising group. So you think that audio sells itself? Well, it doesn't. We have to do visual one-pagers for the sales team to use for pitching the podcast out to advertisers. So there's just so many places and channels and people that this creative touches in some way, or that need some version of our branding and our cover art for all of our podcasts, that it can get unwieldy, as Aaron will will tell you. And then also external partners. So we work, even though we're technically competitors, we're all frenemies in the world of podcasts. Apple Podcasts will promote our podcast. Spotify may promote one of our podcasts. All of our podcasts are widely distributed. So, and Apple has very specific asset needs and sizing and layering and all that fun stuff that they need to be able to put one of our podcasts up in their carousel. If you use the Apple Podcast app, and you can kind of see the different podcasts that they choose to feature. They have to work for us. They depend on us to get them those creative assets to be able to do that. So teams, partners, people, assets, cover art, PhotoShelter is at the center of all of that. And it's really critical to kind of where and how we manage this process. And I will let Aaron, if you want to kind of hop in here, but we use PhotoShelter as our asset management system for all of the visuals that have to do with our podcasts and our podcast artwork when we're doing marketing. So Aaron, you want to give a little overview?
Yeah, I will dive in. Thank you, Amy. I'm Aaron Nestor. I am the senior designer at Stitcher, and I have been making podcasts look good for about a decade now. So I've had a good vision of podcasting's journey. And thankfully, PhotoShelter has really become a super invaluable resource to keep all of our show art in order and organized. If you want to hit the next slide. And you can see there's a lot of it. So there's a lot to organize, and it's still growing. I don't see any sign of it stopping anytime soon, thankfully, because I love doing this stuff. But again, without PhotoShelter, I can't imagine wrangling this in any manageable fashion that is actually functional within a larger organization or with all the external partners like Amy mentioned and everything else we have to deal with. So each show has its own folder. If you want to hit the next slide. And these are organized by network, and then within the network, we've got different shows, and within each of those show folders, we have it really pretty easy to understand. If you need the cover, there's the cover. If you need the graphics pack, there's the graphics pack. If you need the Apple Podcast feature art, there you go. You've got all these different legible, easily understandable way to dive in. And this is really great for sharing with anyone who needs access to that, from producers to hosts to marketing to merch, external partners. It's really, really painless. And I have yet to hear anyone get in there and go, I can't find the file I'm looking for. Go ahead and hit the next slide. This also allows us to have a little bit of a process. Now, it's probably not as in-depth and nuanced as a lot of the other presenters' processes. I was looking at, listening to some of them and like, okay, we're pretty old school here. All right, we've got a few templated files. We're going to put them up here. But what this allows is for consistency when bringing in anybody to help, new designers, new freelancers, and things like that. Each asset here, from the cover art to the graphics pack, everything that you would need to hand off to a designer to produce artwork up to our standards with consistent branding across the networks, it's all right here. If you want to hit the next slide. So, for instance, this is one of our templates. Every network that we do, SiriusXM, More Sauce, Earwolf, Witness Docs, they're all in here, ready to be handed off to a designer or fan, whoever is in charge and needs to make the art for the show. It's ready, and just this is something I maintain consistently, as a lot of the time we're getting new file sizes from different vendors, your Apples, your Twitters, and things like that. Things change, and so having PhotoShelter as this house for these templates is really, really great, because I can just update it, make sure that everybody's on the same page, and there's pretty much little room for error, as you'll see on the next slide. So with all these templates and the easy handoff, we got consistency across the board for our networks. This is Witness Docs in particular, and you'll note, like, on each of the same size things, those are going to have the network branding is the same. There's going to be similar placement. I couldn't make it any easier for anyone, and PhotoShelter just helps out immensely on that regard. And all of this really helps us pull together and put everything in just this perfectly successful little package for launch. Next slide.
And one of the things, Aaron, I think that you kind of glazed over, but not because it in a bad way, because you don't take enough credit. It is that this kind of graphics pack idea, and you know, we did. I think someone earlier when I was listening on the presentation said it's about what innovation means inside your own company and not necessarily
Absolutely.
what the world is doing to be innovative. And this kind of concept of this graphics pack at launch means that Aaron doesn't get 1,000 requests from every partner across our organization for a different size that he has to then go back one by one by one. He just delivers this whole pack. We give every partner a link. We have a launch plan. The link to all the assets are in there. And so it just cuts down on the back and forth and cuts down on the amount of work involved tremendously.
Absolutely.
Whereas, not to knock my friends at SiriusXM, but you know, they're just viewing their creative process. It's entirely different. You actually have to put a work order in for each individual asset along the way. And so we're trying to influence them to get into our process a little bit more, because it is so much easier, and because it is all in one place. And then we can train our internal teams just to know where to go. You know, they don't have to go to Aaron to ask for something every time, because Aaron's just going to tell them to go to PhotoShelter and find it.
Exactly.
That's where it is.
Exactly. Yeah, we try to work proactively in all of this to make sure that everything is set up for success for the launch. And, you know, so much so that we can hand off illustrations to Merch and get cool puzzles made for, you know, synchronous launch with the show. And it just creates this perfect like harmony between everything. And again, working in this industry for the last 10 years and how we were doing it 10 years ago versus what I can do now, just organizationally, it's night and day. It truly is night and day. I love the adage, work smarter, not harder. And this is definitely working smart. And with that, I don't have anything else to say. I'll turn it back over to Amy, and yeah, thank you for your time.
So that was most of our kind of show and tell, just the very, very highest level of how we use these assets and where we put them in, and how it kind of streamlines our process. I know, Andrew, you were going to maybe come back on and have a couple of questions, which we're happy to answer. And you're muted, Andrew. But I gotta say that at least once a day, right?
Exactly.
2021.
I know they sell T-shirts now that just say you're on mute, and I need one of those.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give them to everybody else that I'm attending these sessions with, because I'm guaranteed to do it at least once a day. So guilty as charged. Thank you both so much. That was fascinating. I've never had the opportunity to actually peek inside of your PhotoShelter Brands account, and what a phenomenal collection of individual artwork and the graphics packages for every single one of the podcasts. Dozens and dozens, if not hundreds and hundreds in there. And it's a great example. Obviously, we are PhotoShelter, and people always think of us first about photography, but we've obviously over the years, we've since expanded significantly to accommodate video and audio and graphic, you know, your Adobe files and your Microsoft Word and Microsoft Office files. And I love that you're making good use of the platform for more than just your standard photography use case, and that gets me very excited to see that, like a proud papa in some ways.
I know, anything we can use. I mean, for a while, I think we have our senior management bios in there. You know, senior management headshots, anything, especially if I'm I know I'm gonna get asked for more than once in my, you know, work cycle, my lifetime of work. I try to figure out a way to just give people a link to grab it. All of our logos are in there. So whenever anyone asks for that, whether it's press or internal folks. So If I could get all of our producers to use it for all of our audio, first of all, we'd be using up a lot of your bandwidth, but they are
So
very
like I
much
said,
stuck in their own processes still with the audio side.
we will give
But
you
we
as
train
much
them
as
on
you
getting
need.
into the, you know, this is how they get access to all the cover art. This is how they get things over to the hosts of the show to when the hosts are doing their own social media or other promotions. So great.
So just to make a quick joke, and I know our photographer community will give me heat for this one, but you mentioned headshots, and when they pulled up the headshots from at the beginning of the session here, I realized I think we're still using the same headshot of me that we did when you were the head of marketing. So we're going to have to kind of, yeah, I know it's been a little challenging to produce new headshots during the pandemic, but as soon as we're back in the office next week, maybe new headshots are in
Andrew,
order.
that's my same headshot from PhotoShelter too, just so we're clear.
Okay. Perfect. Well, so you just brought up an interesting point about sort of like conditioning your broader ecosystem of stakeholders who need access to the creative content. You need to sort of educate them to go like, here's the link, and this is where you're going to go consistently to get the creative assets. Can you talk about that process a little bit? And I'm sure it wasn't overnight that you just immediately conditioned people to go to PhotoShelter and grab it, but what did you have to do to kind of sort of socialize that inside your organization and with all of your partners too?
Yeah, a lot of it, and Aaron can probably tell you this too, a lot of it is dog fooding, right? So first I have to use it, and my marketing team has to use it, right? Aaron has to use it.
Right.
And we all have to, and kind of it starts there and it grows from there, because as soon as someone realizes the usefulness and the ease, which they will if they're forced to use it day in and day out, they will just go and know where to go. I can't remember the last time I've been asked for an asset for something, and maybe it's also because I'm the chief marketing officer.
I still get asked for an asset here and there on Slack, and I'll just send them a PhotoShelter link.
Still gets asked. So Aaron, I'll let you weigh in on that too.
I mean, it's just consistent insistence. Like I use it, it's baked into just my process when I get artwork finished and we get the sign off from talent and everyone else. It's just at the end, it's just part of what happens. Everything gets uploaded, a link gets generated, and it gets distributed. Whether or not people use it, it's kind of outside my hands, but I'm just going to keep insisting. Okay, you want the asset? Here's the PhotoShelter link. Here's the photo. No, I'm not sending over Slack. Here's the PhotoShelter link. Save this for the future.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton of sense. So it's almost like you have to hold the line. And as long as you hold the line, ultimately they're going to kind of conform to your behavior, your desired behavior. Amazing. Mm-hmm. One question that we have this great opportunity here with the CMO and the senior designer. I'd love to hear both of your perspectives around like when new ideas come up, when you have new ideas, because so many of the people in the audience are either designers or independent creators or creators inside of large organizations, and they're looking inside of their organizations and saying like, my CMO may not kind of care that much about spending as much money as I think they should investing in visual content or investing in new design projects. So I'm curious about what makes a successful pitch to Amy, and Aaron, what kind of, how do you kind of put that, sort of serve those ideas up as well to make sure that they're going to get approved, and unless everything's perfectly simpatico and you're both operating out of one brain at this point in time.
Yeah. Aaron, I think you probably have you have a really good viewpoint of like also just the back and forth thing, and when people are asking you for more and more changes or more ideas. When people come to me with an idea for a new project or a new visual or something like that, I say, first of all, have we done it before? And go look in PhotoShelter or ask, is this something that we've done before? And if not, to what end are we doing this, right? So where will it get us from an ROI perspective, a brand perspective? There can be lots of different ways to measure it. I'm not always looking at the dollars it's going to produce, but I also look at where else can we, what are the extensions of this, right? So I don't want to do a photo shoot ever that is just going to be used once on social media. Photo shoots are expensive, but I will pay for a photo shoot for cover art because I know that cover art is going to be extended across so many channels. So it's worth $7,000-$10,000 for me to do a really cool, I think I showed Scam Goddess on here. Like, that host had a lot of ideas of exactly what she wanted her cover art to look like. She wanted the crown, she dressed her like, and we were like, let's go with it because that is going to be an iconic image that we're going to put everywhere. So that's kind of how I think about it. And I know Aaron gets asked a lot, I would say even on the merch side quite a bit, Aaron, right? Like for new visuals and new kinds of.
Yeah, there's always new merch, but you know, a lot of this stuff comes out of the initial meetings with the host and like their creative brief. Like, you know, let me know what your show is about. What's the feeling? What's the tone? Is this going to be like do we have a big celebrity like, you know, Rob Lowe or Conan O'Brien that we want to showcase, or is this something that we can get a little bit more conceptual with, like with the Toxic podcast art or the Unfinished podcast art, right? It's still speaking to the story and hopefully being different from, you know, you could pop into your Apple Podcast, your Stitchers, any of your podcast players, and it's going to be a lot of big heads with type over it for the most part these days, especially with the larger names getting involved with it. So I'm always of the mindset, like, how do we stand out amongst that crowd? And it's, you know, interesting photo manipulations and collages or cool illustrations and things like that. Now, granted, we've had some great photography to work it with, and then it becomes my job, like, what typeface, you know, conveys the feeling of the show? What colors? Are we isolating you from the background? Are we keeping the background? What, you know, there's so many different ways you can approach it, and it's really just, it's a case-by-case basis with the host, the producers, the tone of the show, and it could go any which way. It's really just, my job is to listen and try and come up with the best solution for their problem.
Makes a lot of sense.
20 times.
And how frequently is like a given kind of popular podcast, how frequently is the creative refreshed for any one of those?
It really depends. I know Scam Goddess just refreshed recently, but it was like a light refresh. They did like a color retouch, I think. WTF has been the same since it started. Comedy Bang Bang is refreshed. Some stay, some change. It really just depends on the team producing that show and if they feel things are getting stagnant. So I don't think there's any, you know, firm number of years that you know, expiration date on podcast art.
Best practice there.
No, it's really whatever you feel like your audience wants.
Try to connect it to some sort of marketing, you know, if it's a new season or a 100th episode or something that kind of, there's a reason to give it new life versus just doing it for the sake of doing it. Although, you know, there are some hosts that want to do it for the sake of doing it, and we do that too.
Shake things up. So going back to the graphics packs, because I thought those were fascinating, Aaron. How do you decide all the different sizes? It looked like you have kind of a, I don't know what you'd call the table that you showed us, but like that's kind of the kind of template that's necessary to fill and make sure that each of those are available. So let's hear about that a little bit.
It's a living document. It gets updated maybe every 6 months or so, depending on different things that are going on. Apple seems to constantly refresh what assets they need at any point in time. So I feel like I'm constantly going back in to accommodate for them. But each of those sizes, they were just, it was just like, okay, where are we promoting the shows? Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Okay, so we're gonna need the header photos. We're gonna need promo art that we put into any promotional posts and stuff like that. So it's really just getting the sizes from those respective sites and just building the file for myself. And then over the years, it's just gotten tighter and tighter and more consistent. And I feel like it's in a really great spot now. This is, yeah, it's, again, I like to work smart, not hard. So this is saving me a lot of time in the long run. I don't have to go find logos and resize them every single time I'm creating a new graphics pack. No, every network is there, ready to go. Kicking it out of the park.
Yeah, and I'd say that, so the marketing team we usually feed Aaron if there are other specific marketing specifications. Like right now, we're still been a year since SXM bought us, but we're still working on gathering the requirements that SXM has for their assets and getting those in because they're also a little bit different. So I would say anytime there's a repetitive task of a resize or something like that that we see coming across more than a handful of times, that's when it gets templatized, right?
Yep.
Like that's when we just know we're going to need it.
We do this for X amount of show. We do this for, even if it's just for 50% of the shows, even if half of them don't use it, I don't care. I'm just going to make it. It's easy to do. And we have it for when the, random need does arise. Like we don't always get Apple feature art, but I usually produce the Apple feature art for a show. And if they get called up to the big game, like great, we're ready to go. And we're already ahead of things. So just try to think about the future, try to think about any potential use cases. And that really goes into also how I develop the cover art is just like, it starts as a tile, but you got a bunch of other sizes you're going to potentially have to work with, and don't even think about merch and things like that. How is that going to work on a mug or a T-shirt or a sticker, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of forethought that has to go into that process overall.
Got it. And thinking about formats, and since it was a topic that's come up quite a bit today, is Stitcher using TikTok at all to market itself or reach audience?
Amy, are we? I don't know.
Here's some smirks there.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, we're dabbling. Pandora has actually got Pandora and SXM actually have a partnership with TikTok, and they're working with some of the creators directly. It's interesting with podcasts because the podcast audience is actually skews a little bit older still. Older meaning 25 and up. And TikTok has the TikTok audience is so much younger, so we haven't put a lot of resources into TikTok yet. But I will say TikTok, YouTube. So YouTube has become a big place where people quote listen to podcasts, and so we've just outfitted. Well, before the pandemic, we outfitted our Earwolf studio with a Sling video capture system so that we could start using video, and the idea was it would go into PhotoShelter, and so we could get it around for that too. Obviously now we're on Zoom and it's not as exciting to capture video yet, but when we get back, that that would be something we could use for a TikTok and for YouTube. So you very quickly understand how I look at things. Like if I can use an asset lots of times, I will pay for the Sling to be set up, the $1,000 for the Sling to be set up. And
I agree with that policy. So one more practical question, just going back to how to kind of educate your stakeholders, the ecosystem, on getting the content out of PhotoShelter. Have you found yourself building any kind of auxiliary collateral, like guides or anything that that helps people kind of know, like find what they're looking for, get what they're looking for, the specifics around what to go and get, or is it kind of not necessary?
I haven't developed anything like that yet. I haven't found it necessary because usually if it's just a single show asking for an asset, it's, the one show folder that usually has everything that they would potentially need at any point. So I haven't really found a need to develop any sort of like step-by-step process instructions. But as we grow, who knows? That might change in the future, and it might behoove us to have that sort of thing on hand.
Okay.
We're also very controlled in terms of who has access, Andrew. So there aren't many people that can even go in that have the editor access to go in and mess with Aaron's system. And so we really are just shooting people links. Like that's really, it's kind of more the outgoing than it is. We don't have a big team doing tagging or we just don't have that kind of need.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, I wouldn't want to get in and mess with what Aaron's created either. So it looks too well organized. You probably wouldn't let someone like me in the back there.
I'm very protective.
Great.